Iran is not just burning, it is being tested from within and pressed from outside. The protests began with food prices and a collapsing currency, but they did not remain economic for long. They quickly morphed into open challenges to Iran's political order. Streets that once powered commerce now echo with defiance. And as instability deepens, questions grow about how external forces may be amplifying a familiar cycle of pressure and disruption. And as the unrest deepens, questions are being quietly asked. Questions about foreign pressure, information warfare, and external involvement in Iranian domestic crises. But now, as Iran wobbles, the shock waves are not confined to its borders. For India, this moment carries consequences far bigger than Tehran, and we explain why. Hello and welcome. You're watching Statecraft with me, Geeta Mohan. No one is arguing the fact that Iran's regime has been harsh and deeply contested, but it has also been one of the few in the region that consistently resisted American coercion and sanctions. That defiance came at a price that can be heavy for India. Iran is more than a country, it is a corridor, a vital artery connecting India to Central Asia, Russia, and Europe. Two projects define that artery: Chabahar on Iran's southeastern coast and the International North-South Transport Corridor, the INSTC, threading multi-modal routes from India to Eurasia. Both are India's lifelines for trade, logistics, and regional leverage, and both are under threat as Iran teeters on the edge. Chabahar Port provides India a route that bypasses Pakistan, connecting directly to Afghanistan and Central Asia. Its expansion from 100,000 TEUs, that's a cargo capacity, to 500,000 TEUs is underway, alongside a 700-kilometer railway connecting Zahedan to Iran's network. Completion is expected by mid-2026. Delays caused by political unrest could stall these projects, increasing costs and jeopardizing India's regional leverage. The INSTC multiplies the stakes. By shortening trade routes to Russia and Europe, it reduces India's reliance on longer maritime paths. Any disruption in Tehran reverberates along the corridor, slowing trade, delaying shipments, and affecting regional investments. India's bilateral trade with Iran reached $1.68 billion in the financial year 2024-2025. Exports, including rice, tea, sugar, pharmaceuticals, and artificial jewelry, totaled $1.24 billion. Imports from Iran, primarily dry fruits, chemicals, and glassware, stood at $0.44 billion. While India enjoys a trade surplus, disruptions threaten to undermine years of strategic planning.
Change of regime, if it is not terribly disorderly, is all right, because we don't believe in interfering in the internal. Because you would remember when there was the Iran-Iraq war in the 1980s, India continued to have relations with both, and that is where non-alignment helped. But when you become too close to one side, and this is where we signed the India-Europe link, sea and over UAE and Saudi Arabia link between India and Europe through Israel. The problem is then you get drawn very close to Emirates, and Emirates itself is now being singled out as a country too close to Israel. So those divisions are at last playing up, and if we are seen as closer to that group, then it is not helpful in dealing with Iran or dealing with the situation, because it takes away your ability to mediate, your ability to tell them that please don't do it like this, do it like that. So now we have no option but to sit back and just let it play out. The danger is
energy security adds urgency. Iran remains a key oil partner. With Venezuela largely unavailable, China has stepped in, buying significant volumes of Iranian crude. This strengthens Tehran economically and politically, but it also complicates India's access to reliable energy. China's influence in Iran is growing. investments, oil imports, discrete assistance in building missiles, and regional presence are consolidating Beijing's leverage. This emerging China-Iran axis poses challenges for India, not just commercially, but strategically. India's historical ties with Tehran provide leverage, but they may be insufficient in a region where Chinese and Russian interests converge. Russia is a partner, but a constrained one. Moscow and Tehran share strategic interests, yet Russia is also balancing its own relations with China and with India. While Russian oil and logistics support India's INSTC ambitions, Moscow's alignment with Tehran and Beijing introduces strategic risk. India must navigate a delicate trilemma, maintaining ties with Iran, balancing China's growing influence, and ensuring Russian cooperation. US policy further complicates the picture. Washington has historically maintained a dual approach: pressure on Iran while maintaining influence in Pakistan. Speculation about US strikes on Iranian facilities is ongoing. At the same time, Pakistan remains a favored partner for the US, receiving military aid and diplomatic backing. For India, this is a strategic headache. Any escalation in Iran could coincide with US-Pakistan coordination, intensifying regional instability. The combination is perilous. China is deepening influence in Iran. Russia is a strategic but unpredictable partner, and the US tilts toward Pakistan while maintaining pressure on Tehran. For India, this mix is potentially disastrous. Projects like Chabahar and the INSTC, critical for trade and energy security, could face delays or obstruction from multiple fronts. Iran's internal unrest has real operational consequences. Now, if the ports were operationalized, even a minor port slowdown or railway disruptions could ripple across supply chains connecting India to Central Asia and Europe as is planned. Delays increase costs for exporters and importers alike. For a growing economy, these are not abstract risks, they are immediate vulnerabilities. Energy remains a critical concern. Around two-thirds of India's crude imports pass through the Strait of Hormuz. Any instability in Iran or conflict in the region threatens the flow of oil. Prices could spike, supply chains could constrict, and India could be forced to seek alternative, often more expensive sources, including from Russia or the US. Diplomatically, India is pursuing quiet engagement. New Delhi aims to stabilize projects, maintain energy flows, and preserve influence without interfering in Iran's domestic politics. Every port expansion, every railway connection, and every INSTC shipment is carefully monitored. One misstep could compound disruption. Another unpredictable factor is the United States of America under Trump. Reports of potential US airstrikes on Iran raise the question: would America support India if the strikes destabilize Tehran and threaten Indian interests? History suggests caution. Washington has threatened to impose 500% tariff on India for buying Russian crude oil and stalled trade negotiations with New Delhi.
There seem to be some people killed that aren't supposed to be killed. These are violent, if you call them leaders, I don't know if they're leaders or just they rule through violence. But we're looking at it very seriously. The military is looking at it, and we're looking at some very strong options. We'll make a determination. Some of the protesters were killed through the stampeding. I mean, there's so many of them, and some were shot. We get a full report. I'm getting an hourly report, and we're going to make a determination.
The administration is also courting Pakistan, providing military and diplomatic support, which often comes at India's strategic expense. In the event of a regime collapse in Iran, India cannot assume US support. While both nations share concerns about Tehran, Trump's focus on strengthening ties with Pakistan could limit direct assistance to India, especially regarding trade and security corridors like Chabahar and the INSTC. India would likely be left to safeguard its interests independently, relying on diplomacy, strategic foresight, and alliances such as Israel, rather than counting on an American intervention to stabilize the situation. Which brings us to India's calculus with Israel. While geographically distant, Israel shares deep strategic and intelligence ties with India, particularly in technology, defense, and surveillance. In a scenario where Iran's instability threatens Chabahar, the INSTC, and energy flows, Israel could offer insights into regional dynamics, monitoring of military activity, and early warning on potential disruptions that could impact Indian interests.
There is no doubt that Israel are a strategic partner, and more so in the security domain, as well as in intelligence cooperation. It has always stood with us whenever we had a fight against terrorism. Singularly shown to us that it means for it India is very important. But as far as the situation in Iran is concerned, or the way the situation is evolving in the region, for India's interest, the most important thing is stability and security in the region, including a smooth transition if it has to happen in Iran. It is not important that the Israelis or others have been trying to destabilize the whole place. And in that sense, it is going to impact negatively on our own interests, as you know, because it will not be only localized to Iran alone.
All things considered, India's room for maneuver on Iran is dangerously limited. A US administration that is visibly tilting back toward Pakistan fundamentally weakens India's position in West Asia. As Pakistan regains leverage in Washington, it also regains the ability to shape US regional priorities. In such a scenario, Islamabad can actively lobby the US to deprioritize or even block Indian interests in Iran, starting with Chabahar Port. The moment Chabahar loses American exemptions or political tolerance, India's carefully built access route to Afghanistan and Central Asia collapses. Unlike China, India does not have the luxury of defying US pressure without consequences. That is what makes the situation so dangerous for New Delhi. Pakistan has every incentive to choke India's Western access, and a pro-Pakistan US administration gives it the diplomatic tool to do exactly that. If Washington recalibrates its Iran policy under Pakistani influence through sanctions, pressure, or selective enforcement, India becomes a sitting duck. Chabahar becomes vulnerable. The INSTC loses momentum. India is cut out of Afghanistan and Central Asia just as China consolidates its footprint and Russia aligns elsewhere. In that scenario, India cannot deter, cannot retaliate, and cannot substitute the loss quickly enough. It would not be a failure of diplomacy. It would be a structural squeeze, leaving India strategically exposed with very few escape routes. Diplomacy remains India's primary tool. Quiet engagement with Iran, careful observation of China and Russia's moves, and contingency planning for energy imports are central to avoiding a crisis that could cascade across South and Central Asia.
As I explained, there's really nothing much they can do except privately talk to them out. If there is, you would like, because you don't want the disorder to spread to the Gulf. We got 8 million Indians there. They are a second, third largest trading partner. They are access to Central Asia. Then oil price will shoot up. And that's the last thing India wants. And probably also opposite of what President Trump wants. That's why he's trying to capture the oil in Venezuela to have the price of oil drop so that he can bring pressure on Russia. Now, many of these things are now contradictory. So I don't know, you cannot open 3 fronts or 4 fronts at the same time, which is what the US is doing. Because they'll not be able to handle all of them at the same time. And that's why it's being said that you don't have any aircraft carriers in the region. If you're going to be attacking Iran, last time they had a couple of aircraft carriers, which means a number of planes available. Now they'll only have to fly from Diego Garcia, which is far away. You can get bombers coming in, not fighters. So where does India stand in this? I think India has no option but to just do what they've been doing, which is just advocate diplomacy, advocate please talk, and generally keep quiet.
For India, stability in Tehran is not optional, it is imperative. Every port shipment, every railway connection, and every barrel of oil depends on careful strategic engagement. Failure is not just economic, it is geopolitical. I want to repeat again, no matter how harsh and uncompromising the Khamenei regime was or is, Iran has remained one of the very few countries in the region that consistently has stood up to American pressure, sanctions, and military intimidation. That defiance has come at a heavy internal cost, but it has also made Iran a persistent target. So as protests continue and the international spotlight intensifies, India must act quietly, decisively, and with foresight. Projects like Chabahar and the INSTC are more than trade initiatives. They're instruments of influence and security. Protecting them is essential to India's long-term strategic position.
Organization BRICS. So I think if India that faced the biggest trade war that the United States launched against India in this government, if India wants to get better position in the new world order and confront the U.S. hegemony and confront what it did, especially economically against different countries such as India, the best way and if I say the simplest way is enhance its cooperation with the countries in this rising power of new world order, such as Iran, such as China, and such as Russia.
The lesson is stark. Iran's instability, amplified by global power alignments, threatens India's trade, energy, and regional access. In a landscape dominated by China, Russia, the US, and Pakistan, New Delhi must navigate a perilous path. The cost of miscalculation is too high to ignore. From Tehran streets to the ports of Chabahar, from the INSTC to the Strait of Hormuz, India's interests are interwoven with Iran's fate. Diplomatic agility, strategic foresight, and careful planning are not optional anymore. They're survival tools in a region where instability spreads fast and stakes are immense. Iran's unrest is not just a regional concern, it is an Indian imperative. Trade, energy, and influence converge on this volatile ground. India's response must be precise, timely, and unwavering, because in this region, instability is contagious and opportunity lost may never return. Thank you for watching Statecraft.